Ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. The vote begins shortly.
Charge you for the ticket for your room. I think you had asked me yesterday. You're not lost. They didn't charge you? No. Okay, good. Oh, nice. My wallet. Okay, cool. Okay, appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our program, please join us in thanking our convention sponsors. Hold your applause until the end. Our our titanium sponsors, Jerry Marcel and new Jordan Latens. Our platinum sponsors, California Building Industry Association, EG&E, and San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. Our gold sponsor, Personal Insurance Federation of California. Our silver sponsors, California Professional Firefighters, Fresenius Medical Care, and Republican Red. Our bronze sponsors, Alliance Forge, Linda and Richard Alvarez, Americans for Prosperity, Californians for Financial Education, Re-elect Harmeet Dillon, RNC National Committee, Fox 20 LLC, Lansing Companies, White House Worldwide Solutions Incorporated, and both. Our iron sponsor, Campaign Sidekick. And finally, a big thank you to the members of our VIP convention experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming Governor Kristi Noem, being escorted by our chairwoman, Jessica, in the long hat.
Thank you so much. Before we begin, don't sit down. Please continue standing for invocation and continue standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please help me welcome our Central Valley Regional Vice Chair, Lisa Moreno, to start us in the prayer.
Good afternoon. Please bow our heads for prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this special day. Thank you, Father, for the gift of life. We are grateful for your provision, Lord. Be with us, guide us. We ask that you bless this meal in the name of your Son, Jesus. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Lisa. Please join me in welcoming Shane Patrick Connolly, our chair from Santa Clara County.
Please doff your caps and place your hand over your heart and join me as we honor our nation and its flag, the great symbol of liberty to the world. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Please take your seats and enjoy your lunch. We'll be back shortly with the program.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming back to the stage Chairwoman Jessica Malone Patterson.
Thank you so much. I am honored to introduce our next speaker, the Governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. In 2018, she was elected as South Dakota's first ever female governor. In 2022, Governor Noem was re-elected with the largest vote total in the history of South Dakota. As Governor Noem has respected the rights of her people by trusting them to exercise their personal responsibility to make the best decisions for themselves and their loved ones, and in turn their communities. She is focused on building stronger families and keeping South Dakota open for business. At this time, please direct your attention to the screens.
Dad went up, but when he got to the top of the bend and stepped out onto the corn, the rest of the corn fell on top of it. They got tractors, ripped the grain back apart, dug for him frantically, and the ambulance took him to town. They worked on him for hours, but unfortunately, we're not able to bring him back.
She took it really hard when he was killed.
Just thinking, how are we going to get through the next 24 hours? You know, it was hard.
She just took over, and there was no question that we were not going to sell the farm. They were going to farm. There's some kind of a drive in her that makes her get up in the morning and get the job done.
We're not talking about shutting down the country.
Businesses across the country forced to shut their doors, already leading to absolutely stunning increases in unemployment claims.
Right now in America, our civil liberties are under attack.
There's a lot of states that completely shut down their economies and took away people's freedoms and rights.
I decided that South Dakota would not be mandating any shutdowns.
If you look back to Governor Noem's decision to open up Mount Rushmore for 4th of July celebration at that critical time in COVID, it was also inspiring for Americans across the country.
And at a time in our country's history when everywhere else in large cities people were tearing down statues, we gave the world a view of people enjoying their freedom and celebrating American freedom.
Kristi is a fighter. If you don't believe that, just fight with her.
I will continue to fight for the conservative values that have guided me my entire life.
Thank you so much, and may God bless the great state of South Dakota.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Governor Kristi Noem.
Good afternoon. You look fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me to come be with all of you today. Thank you to your fantastic chairwoman. She asks me to do anything, I will be there. I absolutely love her. She is her leadership has been so powerful for the state of California. You just saw a little bit of my life story. I think you probably know a little bit about me. My name is Kristi Noem. I am the governor of the great state of South Dakota. What you maybe don't know is that in South Dakota, our state motto is under God the people rule, which is pretty special for me. It makes it pretty clear what my job is, right? I'm not a dictator. I'm not the one who decides and forces mandates down on people. Our people rule according to our Constitution, which our founders gave us when they gave us this great country, which was the greatest experiment in all of humankind. It's incredibly important. I'm going to share a few thoughts with you today. I want to thank you for inviting me to be with you, and it's going to be just kind of a candid family conversation. Does that sound all right? I think that's more fun. I'm a farmer, I'm a rancher, I'm a business person, and I've run a lot of different businesses in my life, and I've served in many different offices. But at the end of the day, I think what people in this country are hungry for is someone who's just normal. Right? Wouldn't you just like to be a normal politician once in a while that was genuine and actually liked people. So I do. I think it is just wonderful to be with you and wanted to have a family conversation about where we are in our country today. Listen, we've got an election year coming up here in 2024 where I don't think it's about Republicans and Democrats anymore. I don't think it's about political parties. I think it is about people who love America and people who are trying to destroy America. And that is really what battle is over and what it's going to be about. You know, I just got back from the border this week. I was the first governor in the country that when Governor Greg Abbott asked for help securing the border in Texas, that I would send my National Guard troops down there to help work alongside them. We are now on our 6th deployment of soldiers that are down there. We have sent originally down other engineering groups and other security groups, military police. Our Lakota helicopters were down there conducting surveillance. This last time that I went to the border previous to this week was the day that President Biden threatened to sue the state of Texas to tear down the border wall that they were building that was actually working. Do you remember that? Do you remember Texas had actually figured out a way to build a barrier wall that was keeping illegal immigrants out, and Joe Biden said, I'm going to sue you and make you take it down. So I immediately the next day was in Texas at the border. And I said to Governor Abbott, he was not there, but I called him and I was talking to his soldiers and to his public safety officers, and I said, what do you need? And Governor Abbott said, actually, we need to build this barrier faster. We need builders. And so I sent an engineering unit down there, and we spent this week, and they've been down there now for a couple of months helping to build miles and miles of barrier wall that is working, and that we're going to continue to facilitate to do that because it's so important. What I think shocks people so much is that a small little state like South Dakota cares so much. And I want to tell you why we care so much. Is because, first of all, I care when we have a president in the White House that breaks federal law, which is what he's doing by keeping this open border policy that he's embracing and by allowing this invasion of illegals to come into our country, and they're dangerous criminals. Other countries are emptying out their prisons. They're emptying out their mental institutions, sending their responsibilities to the United States of America, and that is why I care. But the other reason that I care is because you hear often now the phrase, every state is a border state. Well, that is very true, but in my state, this is what it looks like. In my state, I have 9 Native American tribes. These are Native American tribes that have a treaty with the United States of America that says that they are a sovereign nation. That means that I, as a governor, and I, as a state of South Dakota, do not have jurisdiction on their lands. The cartels have moved into the middle of our country. They have set up on my tribal reservations, and they are proliferating their drug trafficking, their human trafficking. They are raping our children and our women right in South Dakota, and they're doing it protected by the federal government because the federal government refuses to bring law and order to those communities and keep people safe. So listen, this invasion is not just happening at the southern border. It's happening in areas throughout our country and in South Dakota where the cartels know that they can come and set up operations and do whatever they want to because Joe Biden is letting them do that. That is why this is such a critical, important time in our histories, because we've never had a president that has refused to protect the country when we're being invaded from within and being destroyed from within. What's interesting to me is that so many of these cartels are so sophisticated. Them and their affiliates, as they practice in South Dakota, they're using technology and apps and Chinese manufactured technology and utilizing that in order to move and make money and launder money for the Chinese as they're doing it too. And listen, we have enemies, both foreign and domestic, but it has been so astounding to me to watch our enemies from other countries that have tried to destroy our country for years now partnering, recognizing that the only thing that stands in their way from world dominion, from being a world power, is the United States of America. We are the only thing standing in their way. The Chinese government, the Communist Party, will put their people through horrific situations, horrible human rights violations, and do terrible things to them to get their agenda done and driven. And we need to recognize that they are not only willing to manipulate their currency, steal our IP, that they will treat us unfairly in trade practices, that they will build up their military, that they'll be aggressive to us, they also will destroy us from within. I was the first state in the country to ban TikTok on government devices. recognizing it was owned by the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. After that, dozens and dozens of states followed after that, and we also then saw the federal government take action on federal devices as well. So we have been recognized that leadership matters, and that who's in charge matters to you and your life and to your family. I recently was in a meeting with a bunch of my state employees. They invited me to come to one of their conferences that they were having, and I was taking questions and answering some of their thoughts that they were asking me. But one person stood up at this conference and said to me, "Governor, how do you make your hard decisions? How do you make the hard decisions that you have to make?" And I said, actually the hard decisions are easy, and I want to tell you why. I said, when I have run for office in the past, and actually growing up my whole life, and you saw part of what my life was like growing up on a farm and ranch in South Dakota, it was interesting because I grew up in a family that didn't treat me any different because I was a girl. There was no girl chores or boy chores. There was just work that needed to be done, and we all did it together. And our family spent every day, if we weren't working together, then we'd go on hunting trips and spent all of our time together. When I got elected to the state legislature, I was one of the few women that was there. Took all my little kiddos with me when I went. The interesting thing about South Dakota is that our state legislature is the first one to go into session every year and the first one out of session every year. Our legislature, by constitutional mandate, is only in session for 40 days a year. Yeah, we go in. Yes, it's fantastic. Which means all those legislators have other jobs. It's not their career to be in politics. They actually go there as a public service for about a month and a half. They balance the budget, they pass their bills or kill the bad ones, and then they go home. And as governor, that's fantastic when they all go home. But anyway, so when I was in the legislature, I was one of the few women that was there. When I ended up running for Congress and got elected, there wasn't very many Republican women that were there, but I didn't think that much about it, that I was very much in the minority. And then when I decided to run for governor, the reason I ran for governor was because while I was in Congress, what I had been passionate about was doing tax reform. You see, when my dad was killed in that accident, I took over as general manager of our operation, and we immediately get hit with death taxes. At that time, we had thousands and thousands of acres, hundreds of head of cattle, many different businesses, and the death tax rate was 55% of everything that you owned. If you can imagine, I was 22 years old, and I take over this business. I get a letter in the mail from the IRS that said, because you have a tragedy in your family, you now owe the federal government hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it made me mad. So people ask how I got involved in government and politics. It was because of that. I started showing up at meetings and started being passionate about tax reform. Well, while I was in Congress, I had the chance to serve on the committee that is called the Ways and Means Committee, which most people say is the committee that has the most ways it can be mean. It has jurisdiction over tax policy, health care policy, a lot of trade agreements, all that goes. It's really one of the most powerful committees that's in Congress because almost every bill that impacts a family goes through that committee. But I had had the chance for 2.5 years to work on tax reform, and when President Trump came into the White House and he signed it into law, I was so absolutely thrilled to see the American family get more money in their pockets that they got to keep, that the government didn't keep and pull out and spend in reckless ways. I decided to run for governor because governors are CEOs. Governors have the ability every single day to get up and to make decisions and to set an agenda. And our state was dying. We were losing population, we were losing businesses, people were moving away, and most of the people got us confused with North Dakota all the time, which I was very disturbed by. I always would say, no, North Dakota has the oil, we have Mount Rushmore. And I'm very glad we have Mount Rushmore, but I ran on an agenda of growing our state and giving people more opportunities. But when I ran for governor, it was clear in all of the polling that we were getting throughout the race that people were struggling because I was a woman. See, South Dakota had never had a woman as a governor before. And they were okay, it told me in the polling, they were okay seeing a woman go to D.C. and maybe vote on bills, work on policies, but they weren't quite sure they were ready for a woman to be the CEO. So I had to work hard in that campaign to convince them that I was up to the job, that I could do it. And I ended up winning and running, not really thinking about it that much that I was a woman, just recognizing I needed to prove to them that I was qualified and I was tough enough and that I made good decisions. When I was explaining to the state employee who was asking me how I make my hard decisions, I told them all of that story, and then I told them, you know, I didn't think much about being a female until I got to the ceremony where they were going to swear me into office. And we were standing in the middle of the Capitol Rotunda, hundreds and hundreds of people there on all layers of the different floors of the Rotunda, people looking down, and the entire ceremony was based around the fact that the day I was being sworn in as the first female governor of South Dakota just happened to be on the 100th anniversary of women first getting the right to vote in South Dakota. And I remember standing there thinking, oh my goodness, this is the anniversary of the 100th year of women just getting the right to even have a vote, and thinking about how historic it was. The songs were built around that, the speeches were, every part of that ceremony was built about how historic this moment was for our state in South Dakota. And I stood there thinking to myself, this is a really big deal. And I thought, I better not screw this up. And I started to get nervous for the very first time. When I walked up onto that stage and put my hand on my dad's Bible and raised my right hand, and our Chief Justice of our Supreme Court started to ask me to repeat the oath, there's two things that he asked me to do. The first thing that I was asked to do was, will you uphold the Constitution of the state of South Dakota? And the second thing was to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. Two things, two promises. And I thought to myself as I took my oath, I can do that. Two things, how hard can that be, right? I got it. So that's how I make my hard decisions. And since then, it has been easy. Every single decision that we make, that I've made since I've been governor, has been based on those two things. The very first question everybody who's in my cabinet, who's in my staff, knows that I'm going to ask is, well, is it constitutional? Is this unconstitutional? Do I have the authority as governor to take this action? Do I not have the authority to take this as action? I think the biggest contrast between your governor and me is I don't know if he ever asks himself that question. I think your governor just says, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do because it works for him. We took a very different pathway through COVID than what your governor did. South Dakota was the only state in the country that never once closed a single business. We never once mandated masks or vaccines. In fact, I didn't even define what an essential business was because I don't believe that governors have the authority to tell you that your business is an essential. We were the only state in the country that never once took the elevated unemployment benefits that the president offered. I said, thank you for the flexibility, Mr. President, but we don't need it. Our people want to work, and they did. And we have broken the national historic unemployment record for the lowest unemployment at 1.7% because everybody in South Dakota works. We have had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of businesses move into South Dakota. Thousands, tens of thousands of people have moved into our state. We are breaking revenue records and have more money in reserves than we've ever had before. We built a railroad across the state of South Dakota. I had an 8-year plan to put high-speed internet access into everybody's home in the state of South Dakota. We fully paid for it in 1 year. We have paid off all the debt for our technical schools and our universities. We've been able to get more people outside and enjoying the outdoors, broke every tourism record that we've ever had. And what's interesting to me is families and their incomes have gone up 30% in South Dakota just in the last 3 years. Our families are doing better. And we don't have an income tax. We don't have a personal property tax. We have a 4.2% sales tax. And last year, we did the largest tax cut in South Dakota history and said to people, we trust you with your money more than you should trust the government. The one thing that I would say is so interesting to me is that also while all of this is going on, and we're seeing that as we embraced conservative principles, that we flourished and we proved that it worked. We proved that it worked, but also our mental health challenges went down, our suicide rates have gone down, and we're the only state in the country where our drug overdoses are going down. And I think it's because people are happier. I believe it's because people are happier. So my message to you today is, listen, we don't have to go out there and talk about what we believe in and talk about, our conservative values. All we have to do is point from state to state and prove that what we believe works. That what we believe as Republicans, it actually works. Point at a state like South Dakota and show that if you do what we believe, families will be happier. They will do better. They will make more money. Their kids will grow up stronger. And that there'll be more opportunities going forward. And yes, are there challenging times? Absolutely, there are challenging times. You all have seen me go through challenging times. For months and months during COVID, every night on the nightly news, they kicked me in the head for the decisions that I was making in South Dakota. At one point, George Stephanopoulos asked Governor Cuomo from New York to give me advice on how to handle COVID. While he was sending people to die in nursing homes. He was asking him to give me advice. So I'm not really that interested in what the experts in the media say and what people say. I'm more interested in what science and facts and information I can give to my people and have them be a part of using personal responsibility to make decisions for their families going forward. Listen, I have a book that has come out. You maybe have heard a little bit about it. I guarantee you, if you've listened to the media, you haven't heard the truth, so I would recommend you read it. But there's a few stories in there that I really want you to focus on, because what this book is about how you are the most powerful person in government today. This world still gets run by people who show up. By people who show up every day. How I can get a couple of phone calls to my office and we start paying attention to what's important. A couple people can mention something to me, and I know it matters. I spend every couple of weeks a few hours running a checkout grocery store line, and it is amazing to me to the amount of people. 1 out of every 3rd person that comes through those checkout lines has to go put something back because they are shocked that what they are trying to buy that they just bought 2 weeks ago now is not the same amount of money. They don't have enough money to pay for it. How many families are living on such limited income that they sit there and they debate and try to decide, do I want to keep the pickles or the ketchup? Which should I go put back? Or maybe I need to put the loaf of bread back. And how much eggs have gone up and energy costs have gone up. And it's hurting families and crushing them across this country. And that we need to recognize that the real people, the challenges that they have, it doesn't matter what the national media is talking about. Talk about what people really care about. And that's their kids and their grandkids and their safety and their security and their future going forward. You know, I tell a story in this book about one of the things about me that most people don't really realize is that all the time, every day, no matter what, I'm always wearing something that has pearls on it. The reason I do that is because several years ago, I met a woman that said to me, Kristi, did you know, her name is Sherry, and she owns a store that's called Pearls by Sherry. So her entire store is filled by pearls and jewelry that has pearls in it. But what she said to me was so powerful. She said, Kristi, did you know that pearls are the only precious gem that is created from a living creature? And she said that those pearls, to be created, the oyster had to go through something painful, had to go through something hard, and use that as an opportunity to create something beautiful and to create something that's precious. Now, I love Jesus, and I'm a Christian, and we and Sherry and I talked a lot about, you know, how that is the salvation story, too, how God can take something hard and ugly and somebody that has flaws in their past or something that has not been perfect and turn it into something beautiful, and it can be useful and can be a precious gem. But it also shows that going through challenging times is not a bad thing. That God can take that and turn that into something that is a precious gem that could be used as an example of His grace and His love and what He can do in this country. I'll never forget standing on the House floor when I was first in Congress, listening to President Obama give a State of the Union address and knowing that he was lying to the American people and getting so mad at what he was saying. I was on the back of the House floor pacing back and forth going, God, he is lying right now. Please confuse his speech. Lord, help him to lose his papers somehow. Just make him fly off the podium. I remember literally standing back there praying that he would screw up, that his words wouldn't come out. And that guy could talk too. If there ever was anybody who could talk smoothly and lie at the same time, it was President Obama. But I remember standing at the back of the House floor thinking and praying that he would screw up, and I immediately got convicted. Because I recognized that I was doing the exact opposite of what we have been told to do. We have been told to pray for our leaders, haven't we? Regardless of who they are, we've been told to pray for our leaders and to lift them up. And we need to do that. Now, the president we got in the White House, he's going to need a lot of prayer. I mean, he's going to need a miracle, I think, in order to make it through the day most days. But I would tell you that we, and so much in this country, by the way we talk to each other, that we have forgotten what our true mission is, that we were created to serve each other. We were created to serve people and to have conversations with them. We live in a country that is addicted to being offended, don't we? We just love to be offended by each other. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that. I can't believe they did that. They wrote that. Oh my gosh, horrible people, and then they light them on fire and destroy them and their reputation and all they can do. I'm going to ask you to just get over yourselves. Just get over yourselves. I had a pastor years ago say to me one time, Kristi, people are going to throw offenses out at you all the time. You're the one who decides if you want to pick it up and carry it around with you. But then when you do, you're the one who has the burden. So you can make a decision every day just to walk right by and not pick it up and carry it around. Where you live, the state that you live, you have a lot to be offended about. You've got a lot of disagreement on policy and what government should look like and what the role in people's lives should be. I'm going to ask you to start having conversations with people again. You've got people in your life that you don't talk to about politics or government. You've got people in your life that maybe you go to church with or in your family that you stop talking to because everybody's so offended by each other. I'm going to ask you to start having conversations with them again. We clearly need to win the hearts and minds of the American people. And we only do that by loving them and by having conversations. Now, conservatives, sometimes we screw this up. Some of the best advice that I ever got when I first ran for office was, Kristi, talk moderately so that you can govern conservatively. Now, as Republicans, sometimes we screw that up by talking like crazy people, and then we never get the chance to get elected and actually do something. I'm going to encourage you to have those conversations and start by listening to them. A diversity of opinions around a table and perspectives on background and experience and policy results in better laws, in a better government. It results in a better country where everybody is best served by giving them the opportunity to be successful. We don't promise equal outcomes. We just promise that everybody will get an opportunity. That's what this country gives us. This country needs some builders and some breakers, doesn't it? Some people that need to break down the corruption and dig out the swamp and expose the ugliness of what has been manipulated for a long time. I talk in my book a lot about the money in campaign and politics, the consultants and how corrupt I think they are, how much they just line their pockets and walk on to the next race. I talk about the responsibility of candidates, that you need to run your campaign just like a CEO and just like a CFO. I've run 12 races and I've won them all. And I don't know how to lose. And the reason is because I check every single mileage report, every single invoice, every single person. I know where they are, their time cards, where they spent their time, and I think that every single candidate that runs for office needs to have that kind of accountability. But in this book, we talk a lot about the fact of what's bad about politics, but how the most powerful thing is you, is the citizen that still shows up and the citizen that still cares. Now, I think President Donald Trump is a breaker and a builder. I think he's both of them. I'm very good friends with him. I talk to him all the time. And just a day or two ago, I was chatting with him about a few things, and we were talking about how refreshing it is that people, the American people, are seeing through this sham that's going on in New York City in the courtroom, and how blessed he and his family are that people are actually seeing all the hypocrisy that there is, and what a bad, bad guy Michael Cohen is. There's a lot of personal conversations about Michael Cohen and how he's perjured himself in front of Congress and a bad witness, and yet the Democrats still parade him out there like he's actually got any credibility at all. But the American people are seeing through it, and they're seeing through it, and they're recognizing the persecution of it. But I've often wondered, what makes Donald Trump resonate with the public in this country? What happens with most politicians when they first announce that they're running for office? What do? They usually go out, if somebody says they're going to run for office, and buy themselves a pair of blue jeans, maybe put on a pair of cowboy boots or something, or maybe they'll go stand on a manufacturing plant or in front of a barn or something and say, I'm just like you, golly shucks geez, I'm just like you, and I'm going to go and fight hard for you because I'm just normal. But they aren't normal, and they don't believe it. What did Donald Trump do when he announced that he was going to run for president? The guy comes down a golden escalator. Who does that? No, I remember sitting there watching it on TV going, he's coming down a golden escalator to announce that he's going to run for president of the United States. Like, I was shocked by it. I was like, this has got to be the worst campaign plan I've ever seen in my entire life. And I was thinking that in South Dakota, I think we have 2 escalators in the entire state of South Dakota. I think they're in our airports. So 99% of my people in our state can't relate to an escalator in their day-to-day lives. And I was just thinking, how is this going to work? But what was so fantastic about it was the fact that he wasn't pretending to be something that he wasn't. He was exactly who he was. And that he said, I'm going to be who I am and embrace it, and I'm going to come and I'm going to fight for you. And he doesn't think that he's better than anybody else. He doesn't think he's better than anybody who's building one of his construction projects, or someone who empties the wastebaskets at night, or somebody who's a waiter or waitress at a restaurant. He fights for every single person. And I've never once met someone who works for Donald Trump or his family that doesn't like him and honor and respect him, because he treats them with dignity and respect, because he believes that he's not any better than them and that they're Americans and that this country is worth fighting for. I think it's incredibly impressive that that is the one thing that we need in this country, is elected officials that don't think they're better than anybody else, that know that they're just as good as everybody else in this country. Every day he was in the White House, I was on offense as governor. I got to solve problems. I'd call him up and I'd say, Mr. President, I need to fix this, but your federal EPA is killing us over here. And he'd say, we're going to fix it, Kristi. That's a great idea. Let's do it. And we'd go do it. Ever since Joe Biden got in the White House, I've been on defense. We've been overwhelmed on regulations. They've been suing us on policies. I've just been trying to protect our people and keep our freedoms safe and do what I can to try to prevent them from having their pockets drained out from bad economic policies. And I've watched them try to strip our constitutional rights away in unbelievable ways. Now remember, we just saw, not in the last several years, because the government told people that they couldn't gather in large groups, people rolled over and gave up their freedom of assembly. Because the government told people that they couldn't go to church, that it wasn't safe, they gave up their freedom of religion. And then because the government let social media platforms decide what people could say and what they couldn't say, people gave up their freedom of speech. I was shocked to watch people give up their constitutional freedoms like that just because the government told them to. We need leaders that recognize that fighting for those constitutional rights is incredibly important, and we should never take those away from the people. And President Trump recognizes that. Now, you're going to get asked to do a few things throughout this year that maybe you're going to be uncomfortable doing, and I'm going to ask you to say yes to them. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from my grandma was to say yes. She was talking about being a mom and being a mom who said yes rather than a mom who always said no. So I kind of embraced that for my whole life. The only reason that I'm doing anything that I do is because somebody asked me to. You are going to get asked to help a candidate, and you'll say, well, I've never knocked on doors before. Well, this time you need to say yes. You might get asked to support a candidate by going to a meeting or being a poll watcher or by helping the party do something. I'm going to ask you to start saying yes. This world is run by people who show up. This is the year to show up. And if you're going to write a check to a candidate, write it for twice what you were planning on. Write it for, one thing I tell people, the worst part about running for public office is asking for money. I hate it. I hate asking people for their money because I know how hard they work for it. But I also know that I can't win. I can't fight the liberals and the media and not have the money to tell the truth. It's just it. We're fighting the fake news every single day. It is the absolute truth that they have an agenda. I had a reporter describe to me what they do. He said, listen, we don't write the headlines. The editors write the headlines. 90% of the people just read the headlines anyways. So the editors write the headlines to get the clicks. We write whatever we want to write as a story in the first 2/3 of the story, and then we write enough of the truth at the end so that we can't get sued. That's how we write articles these days. So we are fighting not just liberals and socialists that are trying to destroy this country, we're also fighting the media. And that's why candidates need the resources to get out there and to make sure that people know the truth. What I tell people is I will be a good investment. I will be exactly who I told you I was going to be. I will be tough and strong, and I will represent, I will be accountable to you, and I'll come back to you and make sure that you know exactly why I made the decisions that I made. In my book, I talk about 3 different things. I talk about rhinos. We all know what rhinos are. I name a few of them in there too, so this book is a little bit more unfiltered than my last one. But I also talk a little bit about donkeys. And I don't know, my background in ranching, I don't know if you know this about donkeys, but in order to protect our cattle herds, and especially during calving season from coyotes and from wild dogs, we will put one donkey, one burro with each of the herds. You'll put one out there because if you have one out there with each of the groups of cattle and their baby calves, that donkey will protect those calves. It'll chase off those wild dogs and it'll chase off those coyotes and make sure that those calves are protected. But if you put 2 donkeys in that herd, suddenly they don't care about the calves anymore. They just want to be friends with each other and they don't do anything and they don't serve a purpose. So I figure we only have room for 1 donkey in this country, right? You put 2 of them together, then you've got problems. I don't know. That's a lesson for all of us in that, right? Right? Maybe if you got 1, it's okay. But if there's 2, then you got a problem. So the last thing that I talk about in there is I talk about the American bison. Now, I happen to be a rancher. South Dakota is home to the original bison herd that was brought back when they almost were extinct. We have that herd in Custer State Park, which is our crown jewel in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And so that herd is our responsibility, and we maintain it, and we love them. And Brian and I, our family, we have raised buffalo and had them for many years, and my dad and I used to have buffalo when I was a kid too, so I'm very familiar with them. But what most people don't recognize about the American bison is that when storms come, typically livestock drift with the storm. If you have cattle or horses or any other kind of livestock, when a storm comes through, it could be a blizzard or a rainstorm or a windstorm, they will turn their tails into the wind and they will walk with the wind and go with it to move with the storm. The difference with the American bison is they do exact opposite. They face right into the storm and they walk into it so that they will walk through that storm faster and get through that challenge and that hard time even faster, and they take it head on. I think that's an incredible story for what we need to do right now at this point in our history. Is we need to, instead of just drifting and getting along with everybody and not saying anything and just watching our country get destroyed, it's time to face the storm. It's time to dig in and to walk and to keep going forward and to keep winning so we can get through these challenging times even faster. Let's take a lesson from the American bison and how strong they are and how long they have lived and the challenges that they've gone through, and show them that they can make through those challenges and be even stronger and continue to thrive today. I'm so incredibly impressed with what this country is, what it gave to me. I was just a small farm girl who wanted to grow up and ranch with the dad the rest of her life. And just because people gave me opportunities and I said yes to them, now I get the chance to have the best job that I've ever had, working for the people of South Dakota. And it has been a phenomenal experience for me to help them make their lives better. But I will tell you, we've had challenges, and we will go through hard times. We will be attacked. We have things to fight over, like protecting girls' sports and making sure that we're fighting against China buying up all of our technology, and the national security concerns that we have, and the policies going forward, and the debates that we will have in this election cycle are going to be big. But I want to remind you that those debates need to be had, and they need to be had in a civil manner, and that you have to do it with hope. Somebody reminded me this week that hope is not just wishful thinking. Hope is optimism with a plan. So when you leave here today and when you leave here your convention, I want you to leave here with hope, because this country is desperate for hope. They need hope. But that doesn't mean that we're just wishful thinking. That means that we are optimistic, and we show and we point to places where our conservative policies have worked, and then we have a plan to win, and you work the plan, and you put the work and the time in to make sure that it can be successful. Because I have 3 little grandbabies. I don't know if you guys know that. I've got Brian and I, this next week, we will have been married 32 years, and we've got 3 kids. Yes, I know. And we've got 3 kids, 2 girls that are 30 and 28, and they're both married. And Cassidy's the oldest. She's the 30-year-old. She's the one who has the 3 babies. So she's our favorite, of course. Kennedy, we have told her that she is underperforming and that we're very disappointed in her. And she has an opportunity to make it up to us, but we're expecting some results quickly. And then we have Booker, who's 22 years old. And Booker spent a year actually living out here in San Francisco, working in a ministry with Francis Chan. He's a missionary, and he works in ministry, but he's back in South Dakota now, working with youth that don't have families, that don't have people, and plugging them into churches and getting them mentors and people to walk alongside them. But we're very proud of our kids, but I'll tell you, those grandkids are a game changer. I used to get really, really tired of grandparents bragging about how wonderful it was to be a grandparent, because I thought, it can't possibly be that amazing. It is that amazing. Yet little Miss Addie is 3 years old, and she is fantastic. She is brilliant. And then we've got Branch, who's 1 year old, and he weighs 45 pounds. He's like a brute. And whatever his sister has, he's just going to plow her over and take it. And then just last week, little Miss Lenny Lou was born, and she is the sweetest thing you've ever seen in your whole life. So when people ask me why I do what I do, yeah, it's kind of miserable. It's kind of hard sometimes to see people lie about you and act like you don't have a heart and that you aren't a person who gets up every day just wanting to keep America special. But I do it for those kids. I never want my grandkids to think that their grandma didn't do enough to give them the same opportunities that I had. If we lose the United States of America, where will we go? Where will we go that is better, that will give more opportunities to future generations? There is no place better. And just because we woke up here in the United States of America, we are 99% better off than people that are from 99% other places in the world. Just because we woke up here today, we have more chance for success and opportunity. So let's remember that. Let's go out and be happy warriors, and remember we're incredibly blessed, and may God bless the great state of California, and God be with you, and may God bless the great United States of America. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me with you.
Wow, how awesome was that, Governor Kristi Noem? We will start at the poolside pavilion for our speaker series and nominating session. We'll see you guys there.